video game adaptations typically aren't the best.
Why'd you do that to me?
The stigma on the surface is pretty odd, considering that you're combining two separate billion-dollar industries into one medium. Two industries, I might also add, could quite literally get away with making the dumbest mistakes imaginable, as long as they just spam fan service. So it's with a heavy heart I have to confirm that the stigma, it's kinda true. Like 99% of the time, a project is just destined to go bad, unless it's like the Angry Birds movie, which was alright, the Sonic movie, which was cool, and the Last of Us show, if that even counts, because that's pretty much a series turned to a video game, turned to an actual series. It's gotten so bad that people are calling this phenomenon a curse, and I can't necessarily blame them. So yeah, expectations weren't the highest going into this Nintendo partnered release, but given the hindsight of a couple of weeks, this narrative has completely changed, and now to simply say that the Super Mario Bros. Movie is a success would be a major understatement. This multi-million-dollar love letter to Nintendo fans has quickly swept the nation in popularity, becoming one of the most financially successful films of 2023 in only about a week's time. It then willed itself into being the highest-grossing video game adaptation of all time, and then spun the block and overlapped Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania as the highest-grossing movie of 2023 so far, and at the time of this recording, it has made dang near double the amount that second place has made. As far as actual likability goes, go to any social media review by any general public reviewer, and I guarantee you'll come across thousands talking about Super Mario as if they found the perfect movie. However, if you were guessing the success of this movie based off of initial critics' reception, then this well-received feedback would probably be a major surprise, as the Super Mario Bros. Movie actually debuted at a 50% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, a score that wouldn't find itself changing extremely since then, with it now staying around 58%. This lackluster critic support is interestingly contrasted by the overwhelming general public backing, as audience scores are surprisingly pushing 96%. That's a better audience score than almost every other Illumination project except like Sing 2, which Sing 2 being number 1 is honestly pretty random. Now this is one of those fascinating film moments in which critics and general audiences reflect scores that are so drastically opposing that it would seem as if they were watching two different films entirely. This issue is seen in other blockbusters such as Uncharted, Us, The Last Jedi, and Venom. It seems that for a vast amount of people, they went to their local cinema, they saw the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and they loved every second of it. So you may be asking yourself, why exactly is the Super Mario Bros. Rated so low? And the answer to that is a bit heftier than you may think. Now, multiple times on this channel do we talk about how film judgment is not necessarily just looking at the objective quality of a film, but also taking into account the subjective enjoyment aspects as well, as movies and TV are entertainment at the end of the day. And while these two separate forms of quality may align in certain films, in other projects they may clash entirely. And that's pretty much the root of the issue when it comes to the Super Mario Bros. Movie conflict, as while the subjective side tells the critics one story, the objective side tells the general audiences something a little different. It's why on more public review sites such as Google Reviews, 5 out of 5 stars are the majority, versus a bit more critical sites such as Letterboxd, in which 3 out of 5s and 3.5 out of 5s are much more common choice. Now look, based on pure entertainment value, the Super Mario movie is trailing very few other movies this year, and that list is dang near cut down to 0 if you're a Nintendo fan, because this movie is every Mario fanatic's dream come to reality. A grand embrace of over 40 years worth of happiness this franchise has given generations of people. This movie is jam-packed filled with Easter eggs and references to teleport anyone back to those simpler times, while of course still serving their primary demographic of kids with such an action-packed piece that it will for sure strengthen that Nintendo hold on this upcoming generation. This film in a way serves to bridge that gap, sort of like a passing of the torch moment of such an illustrious franchise. I mean, just look at the reviews for this movie and you'll see thousands upon thousands of people talking about how this film unlocked a piece of their childhood and how they were ecstatic to have that chance to bond with their kids over this shared cinematic joy. While simple, this movie is just an enjoyable time, playing with the #1 motivator in film, and that being nostalgia. The soundtrack, the action sequences, the movie clearly knew what they wanted to be going into things, and you have to give credit when credit is due, as they exceed expectations in creating this environment that will be the most profitable for them and the most enjoyable for the general audience. It's just that unfortunately, when taking these creative liberties to hyper-fixate on certain aspects of their movie, they sort of cut corners, leaving other parts to be very exposed. This led to the Super Mario Bros. Movie as an objective film itself to be not the greatest. It's just that for as nice of an experience this movie was, it does require you to shut your brain down a bit and just accept whatever it gives you. And this is where we find those critics' views come forward who aren't as driven by the theatrics as the general audience. While yes, some of these reviews admittedly are downright way out of left field when it comes to the movie's quality, but many do give valid concerns on what could pull someone out of the movie, whether if they recognize it or not. Like, while not being offensively terrible, the only hour-and-a-half runtime really hindered this piece on multiple levels. The plot felt like a collection of events rather than a story at times, where we unnaturally and rather quickly go from spot to spot to spot to spot, giving itself little time to actually breathe. Like, if you were to walk up to me and tell me that this movie was 75% action and the rest of the 25% was everything else, I would 100% believe you. Constant stimulation just runs at risk of a movie eventually being boring, but maybe they were willing to take that risk in order to cram more references into their box office topping amalgamation of a movie. Any nuanced storytelling, however, is then left underdeveloped or skipped over entirely to maintain this movie's insanely and unnaturally quick pacing. Along with that, you have the occasional awkward licensed song choice here, and the fact that you really only have one notable performance in this movie, and I'll give you a hint, he isn't the good guy. And now you're left with a movie that isn't as picture perfect as you may have initially thought, but still embodies everything good that made the movie well loved in the first place. It gets so difficult when talking about these films that are entertainment first, especially if they're kids movies, because finding that line between what's socially acceptable to be dumbed down and what's not, it's pretty hard. Like, you'll have entertaining yet flawed pieces like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and that's seen as okay, but then you'll see other projects such as the Kung Fu Panda trilogy, or even more recently with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, films that are technically still catered towards a younger audience, but show that you can be entertaining and relatively simple without having nearly as many structural problems with your story. But even through the most objective of lenses, a movie of this caliber touching low 50s is blatant ignorance to the efforts that the movie actually provide. I mean, Jack Black alone puts us at least in the high 60s. If this video has any moral to the story at all, it's that both critics and public opinions are very flawed due to immense context ignorance, but that's why they're both needed to grasp the true quality of a film. If you guys made it this far, I would ask if you guys please like and subscribe to the channel. It only takes 2 seconds, but it would mean the world to me.